been working pretty much around the clock for the last 2 weeks, and it culminated with these tragic events that have been unfolding over the last couple of days. There was officers from every agency in this county here today. They all banded together to protect the community, and it really does kind of reflect the best of what our county is made of in the law enforcement ranks and in professionalism, and I hope that the community recognizes that. Lastly, I want to thank the community directly. I can probably speak for Sheriff Parkinson and myself. We've been flooded with messages of support, praying for us, thinking about us, encouraging us, and I know that the community has felt a lot of angst and a lot of fear, and I'm glad that this is finally over. It's been really a tough go, but with that, I'll turn it back to Sheriff Parkinson and we can answer any questions.
I just would like to add to what Chief Lewis said about the community. We were here this morning, first thing, and a local business owner came and offered a large bag of coffee for the deputies here, and that's not the first and the last that where the community has come and said how much they support and love their departments. This is a tough time for us. We're hoping to get through it. We still have a tremendous amount to do right now with this investigation. There's a lot of information that we cannot divulge right now simply because we don't have the answers for you. The investigation will continue. It'll continue through the night. We have a officer-involved shooting to investigate. We have a homicide to continue to investigate. We have a tremendous amount of physical evidence to process at the scene and also to evaluate. So that will be ongoing throughout the night tonight. We're hoping that we can let the scene or people have access to the scene area again, but I would expect that's not going to be probably until tomorrow morning. And lastly, I just would like to also say that thank you to all of the law enforcement agencies. We worked incredibly well together during a very difficult time. It's very difficult, I can say, for my deputies and even the officers that have worked with my deputies when one of your own is shot and hospitalized and is in serious condition. You know, we posted the picture and released the officer's name this morning. As you can see, he's a young man that has a bright future, and we're glad that thus far that he is going to be doing okay. Also to the other officers that were wounded today, it takes a lot of courage to be out when you know you have somebody that's willing to kill an innocent person on the street and shoot a deputy sheriff in the head when they don't even know them. So I'm grateful, I'm proud of all the law enforcement agencies in this county for remaining professional and putting their life on the line to be out here and protect the community. So with that, I open it up to any questions you might have.
Is there any indication that there was more being planned or perhaps connected to shootings north in Santa Cruz County and Richmond as well?
Well, first about the connections to up north, meaning Santa Cruz or maybe Oakland. We have no indication at this point that they are connected to that. We do know that our suspect did spend time in the Santa Cruz area, but we have no indication that there was a connection. The second part of the first part about being planned, absolutely. This was planned. This was a planned ambush on the police department, and it was planned that the officers would come out and that the suspect would engage them. And the reason I know that is because it happened over about an hour and a half period of time with the suspect moving and not trying to flee. If it was a simple attempt to vandalize, the suspect would have shot at the station and immediately fled the area. But he remained waiting for officers to arrive, officers to come out, and he shot him just like he shot my deputy from a dark corner of the community when my deputies arrived and got out of their car. So I think it was absolutely planned, and he intend to continue. Obviously, he shot another deputy today, with the deputy not even knowing where he was hiding, and the search was not being conducted at the time. They were simply maintaining a perimeter to make sure that the suspect didn't get loose in the community, and they were once again shot from the bushes and hiding to an unsuspecting officer. Unfortunately, that's not life-threatening injury, but nonetheless, you know, being shot is a very traumatic event in your life. And that officer, regardless of whether he heals physically, he still has to live with that for the rest of his career.
Can you touch on the search of the storm drain next to the movie theater?
Yes. So the question was touched on the storm drain next to the movie theater. We discovered today that there was a small entry next to the movie theater that was accessible physically. And you know what? I'm actually, Chief Lewis will probably do a better job describing it, so I'm going to let him finish. That was just an opening.
I think he's getting tired. So yes, we did receive information. Our police department was dispatched out to the theater there in downtown Paso Robles regarding a location that might be linked to the suspect in this particular case. We were directed to an area of a wall that was near the courtyard of the theater. It was located behind some shrubbery, and there was a grate that was across it. Apparently, there was some repair work being done there, and part of that repair work, the repairman noticed that there was likely a transient camp inside of that little, almost like a basement area underneath the building. So we went out there and we discovered that that is likely the place that Mr. Lira had been hiding out over the last several days or living. We found several items of evidence within there that linked Mr. Lira to the commercial burglary that Sheriff Parkinson referred to in San Luis Obispo, and other items of evidence. Of course, Mr. Lira wasn't there, but that's the information that we have about that location.
Can I just add, I want to add something to that's important. The storm drain entry is very difficult to see and truly understand that somebody could get under there or what's under there. Typically, if you look under a building, it's a crawl space and not something that somebody can inhabit. That was a little bit different. There was space and quite a bit of space. On the opposite end of the building that small room was connected to was another steel grate. That steel grate was clearly visible and was locked. The night that we had been searching for Lira, officers and law enforcement did check that and look in that grate with flashlights. Saw nothing, saw no obvious way of entering that, being unknown to them that the other grate was accessible. I just feel very fortunate that our officers did not either spook him, or if he was there, that he did not decide to shoot those officers, because he would have had probably clear shots at law enforcement from that position of really covering concealment.
It may sound like a silly question, but yesterday you called his actions cowardly. What were your feelings today when you're hearing that your suspect was captured?
Well, I stand by that. He was cowardly. He hid in the bushes or hid in the night and shot at and shot one of my deputies in the head. I think that is a sign of being a coward. I think today was another act of that. Shooting from the bushes and wounding another officer, to me, again, the same act. That doesn't mean that the outcome we wanted was how it ended today. As a matter of fact, you may recall Chief Lewis yesterday stated that we wanted him to turn himself in. We wanted family to turn himself in. We wanted a peaceful ending to this. That is not our job to pronounce sentence. And we were hoping nothing more than for him to finally give up, come out of the bushes, come out of hiding and say, I give up. And that didn't happen. But he, again, unprovoked attack, not only on our officer, but last night shooting in an area that easily could have injured another citizen. I feel that he's the one that made that decision, and forced our hand to make our decision.
Ian, do you have any sense of motive, or did he say anything, or do you have any idea of his mental state during this episode?
We don't yet. We could all guess, but the reality right now is that's part of our investigation, looking into his background, interviewing other people. Even though it ended today like this, we cannot conclude our investigations without completing them, and that includes the homicide, but also includes us determining what was the root cause of this, if we can determine. Motive is always a very important item in any investigation, so we'll continue to try to determine what the motivation was that he would want to shoot this innocent person and shoot law enforcement.
Were the two handguns you found him with today the same weapons he used to shoot the police department and that we have?
We know they're the same calibers. They're two different caliber weapons. They were both caliber that we found at the scene where the officers were shot at and the deputy shot, and also at the scene where the victim was murdered.
Aside from motive, what can you tell us about his mental health?
That's going to go to motive as well. We're really kind of scratching the surface as we began the investigation yesterday. We didn't have a suspect, so we spent much of the day trying to determine who this person was, which meant collecting a tremendous amount of videotape, images throughout the city that were captured, then trying to figure out who the person was. I think one of the things that struck both the chief and I after this press conference, when we actually released the picture, oftentimes when you have somebody that's local, people start calling, whether they are friends or whether they are enemies. The fact is people want a peaceful ending, and sometimes they call not because they're enemy, they want them to surrender, they want it to end peacefully. When you don't get calls like that, it tends to be an indication that your suspect might not be here. So we began, continuing exploring who this person was, and just yesterday afternoon, that was discovered. So it really changed the dynamic of the investigation where we were, and then it was a matter of trying to find him. And now we have a tremendous amount of work to do in focusing in on him and what possibly was the motivation for all this. It was really focused on keeping the community safe, making sure nobody else got hurt, and locating him as fast as possible, and that the other motive stuff tends to follow.
Sheriff, how were you able to identify him as you got him?
Well, Chief?
As I mentioned earlier, we had a lot of support from a lot of outside agencies. The Sheriff's Department brought all his resources to bear. I brought all mine in my department, plus we had all the rest of the municipalities helping us. We started putting out images that we shared with you yesterday when we asked for help, and outside law enforcement agency up north of us in the Santa Cruz and Monterey area began sending some pictures of a suspect that they thought was possibly ours, that had previous law enforcement contacts, and we immediately started vetting that information and positively identified him.
Do you know how long he's been in this area?
We suspect, based upon at least the preliminary information that we have, maybe up to a week.
Can I just add something, just kind of to give you a good description of how the investigation works? When we started out that morning trying to identify him, we received some information through my custody division. Obviously, when somebody comes in, they're classified in that remain in custody. We took the images that we had from video that we recovered, had them look at it, and they actually came up with we thought was a very viable suspect. We did a full vetting of that person and actually determined it wasn't him. And that's what an investigation is. Sometimes, you identify somebody you think might be the person responsible, and then we shifted to the actual suspect. So this could have continued all day. I think we were fortunate because we have that connection, because we had images that we could put out to our law enforcement partners and see if they had any idea who it might be.
You said that he just had those two handguns, but how many clips did he have with him if he's been shooting all through yesterday and then also some clips
along with the handguns was a box of ammunition for both weapons. So we were trying to determine that early on. Obviously, he did a lot of shooting. Did a lot of shooting the night. He shot my deputy, and he shot at the officers in the building. He's continued to shoot several times, and so we too wondered. The chief mentioned that when we found that location today, we also found more ammo in there. So we knew that we were probably cutting off his source when we immediately grabbed that ammunition. So, and it was probably going to be difficult for him to get more ammunition. So we were fortunate to find it, because there was no doubt in our mind that he would probably wanted to go back there at night and load up more. And so we knew that he was probably running lower on it, but we really didn't have an ammo count. We just knew that he had a box.
Can you describe his criminal record history and also why he was released last week?
Why he was released last week from Monterey? I have not looked at his criminal history. I know he has one. I can tell you on the release, because I did have personal contact with the sheriff's office up there. He was arrested at the end of May and booked on several charges, including criminal threats, resisting arrest. He was released on June the 3rd, and I think hence why we suspect that he could be, in this area since that time or thereabouts. From everything I can see that was released, he was released on time served. So some plea was reached that he did 14 days in jail, or some other issue, and I have not looked at that at this point, and I'm sure that we will ask those questions, but I guess it's fairly irrelevant that either he's in or he's out, and he was out.
He wasn't released with a $0 bail emergency?
No, 422 criminal threats is not a qualifier, and he was held on bail, and so my assumption is in 14 days he was arraigned, and it was probably a delayed arraignment, which the COVID allowed, and it was probably some time after that he actually was released after court action.
What was he doing at the hotel? I think there was a time when he was at the downtown hotel in Pasco. Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, that's part of the investigation that's going to go on as part of the homicide, and of course the broader investigation that we have going on currently. We had information that, as I think I mentioned in the original press release where we had several surveillance photos, that he'd been in and about the downtown area, most likely living in that little crawl space below the theater for some time, and was in and out of several businesses. We began getting reports not only from the hotel that picture was taken from, but others once his photo was released, that he'd been in several businesses in the area. So most likely, for whatever reason, he was just very active in walking about and going in and out of businesses.
Did he have any military experience that you know about?
That's part of the investigation we'll be looking into. At this point, I don't have any direct knowledge that he did.
That's correct. I just want to add something. Just because somebody is in the military doesn't mean that they can't learn military tactics. I can tell you from the night of the shooting, he moved around a lot, which is really a military type tactic. Don't shoot from one location and move. And we found throughout this that he had the ability to do that. And it wasn't a don't move, don't retreat. It was purpose movements into other locations. So we don't know the full answer to that question yet, but I can tell you he was prepared to move and act as though this was a fairly tactical ambush.
Can you repeat one more time the total number of officers that have been killed, injured, and selected?
Yeah, so the first officer injured was my deputy, who was shot in the head. Second was the CHP officer, correction, in order. The second was the sergeant from the Arroyo Grande Police Department that was shot in the calf. The third and fourth were the CHP officer that was shot in the bulletproof vest, and the last was the Kings County deputy that was shot above the knee.
Sheriff, we visited that Chevron early this morning. Really no incident there, so, I mean, he probably could have done some harm there. So he doesn't do any harm there, so clearly it's the impression that he's after law enforcement. He's not intent on hurting civilians, he's just focused on law enforcement.
I think there's some truth to that, but I would say this, that we don't know really what unfolded at that Chevron. In other words, was he there to try to get some food or water? Was he there to entice us? His picture was everywhere. I mean, you posted it everywhere, and that's what we want when we release, and we're looking for somebody that's dangerous. So we don't know at what point was he looking to be recognized, or was he waiting for a law enforcement response? He did, in fact, shoot at officers that responded there and retreated. So we don't know his intent, just as we don't know the intent of shooting the innocent man at the railroad station. So we're trying to find that out. But I think, as I said, I think largely, it's fairly accurate. He did want to shoot law enforcement.
What information do you have about the victim that was killed yesterday?
So the information that we have is still developing. We're vetting all the information. My information is he's 59